Well, the report was co-authored by the former Defence Secretary, Dame Penny Mordaunt, who's here with us now. Thanks very much for being with us.
Good evening.
You're here to talk about an important report, but before we do speak about that, I was keen to get your reaction to the news that we've learned today, that there are these 19,000 names of Afghans leaked in 2022, and then the previous Conservative government effectively tried to cover it up. What's your take on all this?
Well, I'm sure Parliament's very shocked to hear this, and I understand completely, as Andrew Mitchell alluded to earlier, why people have been so cautious and wanting to make sure that layer on layer of injury wasn't added to this terrible data breach. I do think, though, there is an issue about what Parliament is aware of and how Parliament can scrutinise these things and get to know about them without it having to be in the public domain and on the floor of the House. And I've long argued that on issues like this and on special forces operations, which are evolving, that the Intelligence and Security Committee in Parliament, which is like a select committee, but it is secret, it has MPs on it, senior ones usually, and it currently takes information usually from the intelligence agencies, but not defence. And that is a forum where you could, I think, share certain information to help keep departments honest, but it be protected.
Because this is the thing, isn't it? I think sometimes from an outside perspective, you look at it and you think, this is a massive data breach, potentially people's lives at risk, and millions of pounds of public money as well involved in it. Surely we've got a right to know about it.
Yes, I mean, that are all the reasons why Parliament, in some capacity, ought to be cited on some of these things. But understandably, the priority, and I think that's the right one, is to make sure that people who we have a moral duty to are protected.
When did you first learn about it?
Well, today.
Today, yeah.
Yes.
And do you think that, how do you think as well about the way that we've treated, I guess, the Afghans historically as well? These people who fought alongside us, they trusted us. Do you think we failed them?
Well, look, I think that this data breach, but also the way that we withdrew from Afghanistan because the Americans decided that they weren't going to stay there, has done tremendous damage to our reputation. These things are not easy, and in the schemes that went before those incidents, I mean, I can remember, for example, a case of somebody who had served alongside our armed forces, had armed forces personnel willing to vouch for them, but we knew that through forensics they had been working for the Taliban in laying IEDs. So sometimes information in the public domain is not the whole story, but by and large we have a huge debt to these people. I'm glad to hear that the case of the triples, as they're known, but those people that were special forces and worked absolutely hand in glove with our special forces guys, their cases are still open and they're still being looked after, and those that have applied to the scheme will still be able to come here.
I'm keen to talk about this report into anti-Semitism in the UK, with the recommendation of an anti-Semitism training qualification. What are the headlines, do you think, from what reports?
Well, look, I mean, I didn't expect to be shocked in the evidence sessions we took, but I was, and it's about people's experiences going about their everyday lives, of being in the workplace, of using public services. So, for example, we took evidence from people who've chosen to do a particular profession, they were teachers or social workers, for example, who have to be a member of a particular professional body or a trade union in order to get the indemnities that they need to work, being appallingly abused in those situations. They don't have a choice to engage with those organisations. So we've suggested some things that could be done to prevent that. If you are in a role where you are primarily there to look after the welfare, care, safety and security of others, you work in the NHS or Transport for London, or you're a university welfare officer looking after vulnerable disabled people, you shouldn't be wearing political symbols at work. You shouldn't be doing things that put a barrier up between you and the person that has to trust you. These are very practical things we're suggesting.
How do we decide what a political symbol is? Like, is a poppy a political
Well,
symbol,
it's up to the employer. And what we're trying to do through this is not create loads of legislation. You can't create that duty of care we have to each other via legislation. This is about giving employers some really good ideas to recognise what anti-Semitism is, and to tackle it where it has set root in particular organisations. And we now have the evidence and case studies to show that.
You said that you want consistent decision-making and standards across all police forces, for example, throughout the country. Do you think anti-Semitism is treated less seriously than other forms of racism by the police?
I think what we found was that there are some police forces, understandably, that deal with this a lot. If you're the Metropolitan Police, you're dealing with issues about protesting and policing these matters. You have huge experience. In other parts of the country, you don't. And it's all of the good practice that exists in parts of the police force across the UK, enabling that to be consistent across the whole of the UK. And it's not just about what happens in the police force, it's about how they liaise with community groups, how they liaise with the security organisations that look after the Jewish community, and how they can access additional funding to help them do that. Big inconsistencies across the UK on that.
Great to have you on the programme tonight. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Sophie.
There.